I used to think perfection was safe. I thought if I just found the right neighborhood, clean lawns, friendly smiles, no surprises, everything in my life would finally make sense again. But perfection has a cost. And the woman who ran our homeowners association, Marjorie Kane, was willing to pay it in ways I still can't explain. I learned that the hard way, on the night I found what she was keeping in her basement. Image prompt: cinematic photo of a spotless suburban cul-de-sac in late afternoon. Manicured lawns, beige homes perfectly aligned, sunlight low and warm but unsettling in its uniformity. When I first moved to Brookhaven Estates, I thought I'd finally done something right. After the divorce, after losing the condo, after a year of sleeping on my brother's couch, I wanted peace, something I could control. Brookhaven looked like peace. The roads curved like they'd been drawn with a ruler. Every tree was the same height. The air smelled like sprinklers and asphalt. The real estate agent said, "You'll love it here, no drama, no crime, no surprises." And for the first few weeks that was true, too true. The day I moved in, I met Marjorie Kane, HOA Chairperson. She showed up before I'd even unpacked, holding a clipboard and a pastel folder labeled "Welcome to Brookhaven." She looked like someone carved out of neatness itself. Hair in a silver bun, white blouse, gold glasses, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She handed me the folder like a sacred text. Inside were pages of rules, paint codes, mailbox standards, trash schedules, approved flower types. I remember laughing a little and saying, "Guess I'd better stay on your good side." She didn't laugh back. She just said, "That's what everyone wants." The first week went fine. I repainted my fence, trimmed my lawn, waved to neighbors I couldn't tell apart. The neighborhood was so quiet it felt rehearsed, like everyone was playing a role in a show called Peaceful Living. But then one night, I saw Marjorie again. I was watching TV around 10 when headlights moved across my window, slow, deliberate. I peeked outside and saw her car creeping down the street, headlights off, just rolling like a ghost. She stopped at each house, wrote something on her clipboard, then moved on. The next morning, I found an envelope taped to my door. Mailbox paint slightly chipped. Please correct within 48 hours. There was a photo inside of my mailbox, taken at night. I repainted it immediately. I told myself she was just thorough. I wanted to fit in, to be invisible. But she noticed everything. The next week I left my trash cans out for an extra hour. Another note: non-compliance observed. By then I'd started to wonder how she saw so much. Cameras, patrols, or just insomnia and obsession. Then I realized something. I never saw her husband, never saw anyone visit, just her car moving at night like clockwork. That's when I started paying attention. She did her nightly patrols at exactly 10:03 p.m. I know because I started timing her. Every night, she passed my house within 30 seconds of that. One night, I decided to stand outside and wait. When her car reached my driveway, she slowed. I waved. She didn't wave back. She just accelerated and disappeared into the cul-de-sac. I went to bed uneasy. When I woke up, there was a single Polaroid under my doormat. It was my backyard. The caption written in neat blue ink: "Fence alignment 2 inches off." That's when I stopped laughing at the rules. I fixed the fence that day, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. At the next HOA meeting, I decided to observe her up close. The community center smelled like coffee and carpet glue. She stood at a podium under fluorescent lights, sorting papers like a surgeon. Every file labeled, color-coded, time-stamped. The way she ran that meeting, it wasn't about keeping peace. It was about control. Every motion passed with robotic precision. She even corrected a man's posture mid-sentence. People didn't argue, they obeyed. I remember thinking, she's not managing a neighborhood. She's running a laboratory. That night, I walked home under a sky that felt too clean, too polished. I noticed small black domes on every lamppost, security cameras. The HOA newsletter said they were for community safety, but I'd never seen anyone but Marjorie touch them. A few nights later, I saw her car again. This time it stopped at her house. Lights were off except for a faint glow from a basement window. I could see her silhouette moving below ground, slow and deliberate. She was adjusting something, small. I told myself it was none of my business, but the next night I couldn't resist. I parked down the street, crept through the yard, and crouched by the basement window. The glass was dusty, but I could see enough. Rows of shelves, tables, a lamp. And on those tables, tiny houses. Miniatures, perfect replicas of Brookhaven homes, each one painted and landscaped with disturbing precision. I saw her lift one gently, dust it with a brush, then make a note on her clipboard. Her face was calm, almost tender. It looked like love, and that scared me more than anything else. I couldn't sleep that night. I told myself she was just eccentric, building a model neighborhood for a presentation or something harmless. But something about it didn't fit. The miniatures were too exact. 2 nights later, I went back. I brought gloves, a flashlight, and a bad idea. The basement window latch was old, barely latched. I slipped inside. The air smelled of paint, cedar, and something electrical. The shelves stretched wall to wall, each holding a model house. Every one had a label on the front, the owner's last name and address. Then I saw mine. Bishop, Lot 47. It was my house, exactly. The siding color, the curtains, the mailbox, even the little chip in the fence I'd just repaired. I stared at it, fascinated and horrified. Then I noticed a small switch underneath the base. I flipped it. The tiny house lit up. Every window glowed softly, like it was alive. In the corner, a rack of monitors flickered on, feeds from security cameras all over Brookhaven. My neighbors' driveways, porches, even their backyards. It wasn't a model, it was a map. A live one. I stood there in the hum of electricity, surrounded by 1,000 perfect homes, realizing every one of us was part of her system. Marjorie wasn't documenting perfection, she was controlling it. I wanted to run, but then I heard the floorboards creak above me, her footsteps. I turned off the light and froze. My heart thudded so hard I thought she'd hear it through the floor. She paused right above me, then moved toward the stairs. I climbed out the window and sprinted home like a thief. That night, I locked every door and unplugged every camera I could find. For days, I didn't see her, but when I did, she smiled at me differently, like she knew, like she was waiting for me to make a move. I played along, mowed the lawn, waved at neighbors, nodded at her car as she drove by. Inside, I documented everything. The basement photos, the monitors, the switch on my model house. I wasn't going to be another file in her binder. I was going to be the one who opened it. That's when I reached out to a local reporter. He'd written about privacy scandals and suburban corruption before. I sent him one picture, Marjorie's basement full of miniature homes glowing like a shrine. He called me back within the hour. That was the beginning of the end for Brookhaven Estates. When I hit send, I half expected my computer to explode. The email contained 6 photos and a short message. This is happening in Brookhaven Estates. You'll want to see it for yourself. For a moment, I felt powerful, then the fear set in. Because if I was right, if Marjorie really was watching everyone, she'd know exactly what I'd done. I unplugged my router, turned off my phone, and sat in silence for hours. The street outside looked normal, too normal. The sprinklers hissed like they were laughing. The next morning, I saw the first news van. By noon, there were 3. Reporters in polo shirts, camera operators, people holding microphones like weapons. They swarmed the community center. Someone had tipped them off. I watched from behind my blinds as they knocked on Marjorie's door. She answered like a woman welcoming guests for tea. Calm, perfect. She smiled for the cameras, said a few polite words, then closed the door. An hour later, the HOA website was offline. That night, I heard shouting from across the street, neighbors arguing, demanding answers. Cars parked on lawns, lights flickered on and off. Brookhaven's perfect rhythm cracked in a single day. And somewhere in that noise, I felt a strange satisfaction. I told the reporter everything. His name was Matt Harlan from Channel 8 Investigates. We met in a diner 3 towns over. I brought a folder of photos, dates, and written notes, every detail I'd collected since moving in. He listened without interrupting, his face shifting from skepticism to disgust. When I showed him the photo of my miniature house glowing under Marjorie's lamp, he said quietly, "This is unreal." He asked if he could film me for the piece. I told him no. I didn't want to be on camera. I just wanted people to know what she'd done. A week later, the story broke. Inside the neighborhood that watched itself. That was the headline. My neighborhood plastered across every local broadcast, every news site. They showed aerial shots of Brookhaven, interviews with angry homeowners, and pixelated images of Marjorie's basement. They called it the diorama of control. Reporters said she had installed illegal surveillance devices on common property, linking them to a private feed in her home. They didn't name me, but the neighbors guessed. That night someone threw a rock through my window. The note tied to it said, "You ruined everything." They weren't wrong. The next HOA meeting was chaos. Half the residents demanded Marjorie's resignation. The other half defended her, saying she kept the place perfect. Marjorie stood there in her usual pastel cardigan, calm as ever. She didn't deny anything. She just said Brookhaven was my creation. Then she walked out. The board dissolved 2 days later. The HOA accounts were frozen pending investigation. Contractors stopped maintaining lawns, the security gates failed, and for the first time the neighborhood started to look human. Weeds appeared, cars parked slightly crooked, porch lights burned out and stayed that way. It was messy, and it was beautiful. But it didn't feel like victory. I started getting calls from unknown numbers, silence on the other end, notes left under my door handwritten neat in blue ink. "Why did you do this? We were happy before." One morning, I found a single photo in my mailbox. It was me, standing in my kitchen. The angle was from outside the window. I checked every corner of the house. No cameras, no devices. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched again. It got worse after the police searched Marjorie's house. They found her basement stripped bare. No miniatures, no monitors, nothing but dust rings where they used to sit. She was gone, too. No forwarding address, no sightings, just disappeared. For a week I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the models, how she built them from scratch. Every tiny fence, every curtain. How long would something like that take? How long had she been doing it? And then came the final visit. It was around midnight when I heard the knock. Soft, deliberate. I opened the door to nothing but a small cardboard box on my doormat. No return address, just my name, written in that same thin, perfect handwriting. Inside was a miniature tree. My tree, the one from my front yard, crafted in plastic and wire. Underneath it, a note, "Perfection continues." I threw the box away. I wanted to believe it was a prank, that someone from the neighborhood was just messing with me, but deep down I knew it was. 2 nights later, I dreamed I was back in her basement. The miniatures glowed around me, whispering in electric hums. Only mine was missing from the shelf. When I woke up, I looked out my window. Across the street, Marjorie's house was dark, empty, and for sale. But in the basement window, the one she'd left uncovered, I saw a light flicker once, then go out. The police never found her. The HOA dissolved completely within a month. The gates rusted, the lawns dried up, and people started moving away. By winter, half the homes were empty. I stayed. I told myself it was because I wanted closure. The truth is, I didn't want to admit she'd gotten the last word. Sometimes I still hear a car idling outside around 10:03 p.m. When I check, there's nothing there. But I always feel like someone's keeping notes. I've learned something about perfection. It doesn't disappear. It just finds new rules to live by. I thought about burning down my house once, just to make sure it wasn't still connected to whatever she built, but I couldn't. Maybe part of me still craved the order she created. Then one morning I saw it, at the edge of my porch. A small wooden plaque, about the size of a coaster. Painted white, stamped neatly in blue ink, Lot 47 restored. That was 3 months ago. I haven't told anyone. Brookhaven is nearly empty now. Houses for sale, lawns uncut, mailboxes rusting. The silence feels heavier than ever. But every time I walk by Marjorie's old house, I swear the basement window looks cleaner than before, like someone wipes it down every morning. Sometimes, when the wind is just right, I can almost hear the hum of those tiny lights again. And I wonder, what if the models weren't gone? What if she just moved them somewhere else? Maybe she built a new Brookhaven, one even more perfect than before. Maybe she's waiting for me to find it. It's been 4 months since the story broke. Brookhaven looks like the skeleton of something that used to breathe. Half the homes are empty now. The lawns are dying, the mail piles up, and the silence is different. It's not peaceful anymore. It's waiting. I wake up every morning around 6, pour myself coffee, and sit by the window. There's nothing to watch, but I keep looking anyway. Sometimes I catch my reflection and don't recognize the man staring back. He looks nervous, older, like he's still waiting for someone to tell him what to fix next. People started calling it the Watcher's neighborhood. Realtors can't sell a single house. There's a rumor that anyone who buys here ends up leaving within a week. Some say they hear noises in the walls at night, small electric hums like static under the floorboards. I've never heard them, but I do hear something else. It's the faint tick of a motor somewhere deep in the neighborhood. A steady, mechanical heartbeat that starts just after sundown and stops before dawn. At first, I thought it was power lines. Then I realized the sound always came from the same direction, Marjorie's old house. I told myself I was done with her. I'd exposed her, ruined her little empire, seen the inside of her nightmare. But I couldn't stop wondering, where did she go? What happened to the models? The police report said they found no significant evidence of miniature structures. That phrasing stuck with me. No significant evidence, not none. So one night I went back. The gate to her backyard was unlocked. It swung open like it had been waiting for me. The grass was waist-high now, brittle and pale. I found the basement window, the one where I'd first seen her moving among her models. The glass was cleaner than it should have been. I wiped it with my sleeve and peered inside. Empty shelves, bare concrete, nothing but dust. Except there was a faint light coming from the far corner, something metallic glinting under the floor vent. I crawled through the window. The air was colder than outside, thick with the smell of old paint and electricity. The walls still had faint outlines where the shelves had been, ghostly rectangles of lighter color. I followed the glow to the vent. It wasn't just a vent, it was a small steel panel with screws that looked freshly turned. I pried it open and found a compartment inside. There was a single object. A model house, my house. The siding was cracked, the roof partially caved in, but it was unmistakably mine, complete with a tiny chip on the mailbox and the crooked fence I'd repaired months ago. And underneath it, a small speaker. I picked it up, and a low hum began to play through the speaker, a static noise that built into something faintly human. A voice. Her voice. Perfection is never destroyed, it said, soft and distant. It's only moved. Then silence. I dropped the model. It shattered on the floor. Tiny shards of my perfect little house scattered into the dust like teeth. That was when I realized the hum I'd been hearing every night wasn't from her house. It was coming from somewhere else. Somewhere below. I left the house shaking. The night air felt heavier now, charged like before a storm. When I reached the street, I heard it again, the faint mechanical rhythm ticking like a clock under the ground. I followed it, past the cul-de-sac, past the rusted playground, down toward the drainage area that bordered the neighborhood. There, hidden behind a row of dead shrubs, was a service hatch, the kind the maintenance team used to access power conduits. It had a padlock, new, shiny, perfectly clean. I didn't remember it being there before. I should have stopped. I should have gone home, called someone, done anything else. Instead, I broke the lock. The tunnel beneath was narrow, lined with concrete and cables. The hum grew louder with every step. I followed it like a heartbeat, deeper and deeper, until the walls began to vibrate. Then I saw light ahead, soft and white, flickering through a doorframe. I stepped inside, and my mind split open. It was another basement, bigger than hers. Rows of tables, every one covered with models, hundreds of them, some new, some half-built, and in the center of it all stood a large metal structure humming quietly. At first, I thought it was a generator. Then I realized it wasn't powering the room, it was receiving. Every miniature house was wired into it, their tiny windows pulsing in rhythm with the machine. On the nearest table sat another model of Brookhaven, not the old, pristine one. This one looked decayed. The lawns browned, the roofs cracked, the cars missing. It looked exactly like the neighborhood above. Except for one thing. My house wasn't there. I don't know how long I stood there. I just remember my heartbeat syncing with that mechanical rhythm until I couldn't tell which was which. Then I noticed a figure in the far corner, small, still. It was a mannequin dressed in Marjorie's cardigan and skirt. Her gold glasses rested on its face, tilted slightly. Around its neck hung a name badge, Chairperson Kane. In its hands a clipboard, on the paper, Lot 47 restored. I backed away, shaking. The machine's hum grew louder. Lights in the models flickered faster, like they were pulsing to a silent countdown. I turned and ran through the tunnel, scraping my hands on concrete as I climbed out into the cold air. When I looked back, the hatch had already swung shut. There was no lock this time, just the faintest echo of that hum beneath my feet. I never went back. The next morning, I tried to tell the police what I'd found. They searched the site, said there was nothing there, no tunnels, no chambers, just a storm drain. They looked at me like I was losing it. Maybe I was. But that night, as I lay in bed, my house creaked in a way it hadn't before. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. I could hear something faint, a rhythm in the walls. The same rhythm as before. The same hum. The same perfection, waiting to be noticed again. I don't sleep much anymore. I spend my nights walking through the empty streets, listening. Sometimes I catch glimpses of small things out of place. A mailbox that wasn't crooked yesterday, a curtain drawn differently, a garden gnome moved 2 inches to the left. Someone or something is still adjusting. Last week I found another box on my porch, smaller than the first. Inside was a single item, a fragment of a miniature wall, perfectly painted beige, with a number etched on the back. 47. The smell of cedar and paint hit me like a memory. She's still building. Sometimes I think about leaving, selling the house, driving until the roads lose their symmetry. But when I picture the outside world, all I see are copies of Brookhaven, newer, shinier, quieter versions. And I wonder if I'd just find another basement waiting for me. So I stay. The lights still hum at night. The sprinklers start at exactly 6:00 a.m. And sometimes when I look out the window, I swear I see her car again, rolling slowly past, headlights off, 10:03 on the dot. I don't wave anymore. I just take notes. Because maybe she was right all along. Maybe perfection can't die. Maybe it just changes hands. It's been a year since I moved into Brookhaven Estates. Sometimes I forget there were ever neighbors. The houses stand like props, perfect and hollow. When the sun rises, it paints everything gold, and for a heartbeat it looks alive again. Then the light shifts and the illusion fades. I've stopped counting the days. Perfection doesn't keep calendars, it just repeats itself until you stop noticing. I keep the lawn trimmed. I repaint the mailbox when the color dulls. I edge the driveway even though no one drives here anymore. At first I did it to keep busy. Now it feels like obligation, like muscle memory. Sometimes I catch myself whispering her old rules out loud, paint code numbers, hedge limits, the phrase excellence in every corner. It comforts me the way repetition comforts the insane. The neighborhood maintenance trucks never returned, yet somehow the streetlights still work. They flicker on each evening, right on schedule. I tell myself it's just an automated timer, but deep down I know the system shouldn't still be powered. The HOA accounts were closed, the utilities cut. Something else keeps them alive. And some nights I think it might be me. After I found the underground chamber, I tried to move on. I really did. But I couldn't stop thinking about those models, the quiet hum, the way the lights pulsed like heartbeats. I started building one myself. It began as therapy, or at least that's what I told the therapist I stopped seeing. I printed blueprints of my house, bought small sheets of balsa wood, tiny LEDs, little strips of artificial turf. It was supposed to be a way to understand her obsession. But the longer I worked, the calmer I felt. Each night I added another detail: curtains, fence, mailbox. The act of making order out of chaos felt pure. When I finished, I wired lights through the windows and flipped the switch. They glowed exactly the way hers had. I didn't expect what came next. The lights in my real house flickered in unison, 3 slow pulses, then steady. I stood frozen, the hum vibrating through the floorboards. I unplugged everything, but the miniature stayed lit. I told myself it was impossible. Some feedback loop, maybe a residual current. I threw a blanket over the model and tried to sleep. At 10:03 p.m. a car passed by, headlights off. I didn't need to look to know who it was or what. The sound of tires on pavement matched the rhythm of the hum inside my walls. When I lifted the blanket, the model's front door had opened on its own. That was when I stopped fighting it. I began cataloging again. I noted when the sprinklers started, when the streetlights blinked, when the hum grew louder. I wrote reports no one will read. Maybe this is what she felt. This illusion of control, this quiet sense that the world finally makes sense if you measure it hard enough. The more I record, the less I dream. Last week, I walked through the cul-de-sac and saw something new. Every house, every single one, had a small white plaque nailed to the porch step. Lot 23 restored. Lot 31 restored. Lot 47 restored. Mine was first, the others followed overnight. No footprints, no tools, no sound, just perfection returning one house at a time. I tried to tear mine off. The nails wouldn't move. The wood beneath felt harder than metal. When I stopped pulling, I heard something, tiny scraping behind the walls, like wiring being adjusted. That night the hum grew stronger, and the air smelled faintly of cedar and paint again. She's still here, not as flesh, maybe not even as thought, but as pattern. And patterns need caretakers. Sometimes I think about the first time I saw her basement, the miniature world glowing in the dark, every home alive in her hands. I used to feel sick when I remembered it. Now I feel nostalgia. I understand her now. I understand that perfection isn't cruelty, it's containment. It keeps the noise out. It keeps the world small enough to manage. The problem is, once you learn to love control, you stop noticing who's controlling whom. I spend my days maintaining Brookhaven's silence. I replace burnt bulbs, trim hedges, tighten mailbox screws. No one asks me to, but I feel better afterward. When I finish, the air hums a little softer, like approval. Last night, I walked past Marjorie's old house. The for sale sign was gone. The windows were clean again. In the basement window, I saw the faint flicker of light. Just one, pulsing slowly, in rhythm with the miniature on my desk. I wanted to look away, I didn't. I stood there until the flicker stopped, then went home and wrote a new entry in my log. 10:03 p.m., synchronization achieved. When I finished, the page smelled like her perfume, lavender and printer ink. This morning, I woke up before sunrise. My miniature was gone. The table was bare except for a single new clipboard lying where it had been. At the top, Brookhaven Estates maintenance summary. Underneath, a list of tasks. Cut hedges to 2.5 feet. Polish mailbox. Inspect Lot 46 alignment. At the bottom, a signature line. Chairperson Bishop. I didn't sign it, but I will, I know that now. Because the moment I read my name, the streetlights outside blinked twice, like they were waiting for confirmation. Maybe she never disappeared. Maybe she just needed someone to keep the system running. Maybe that's what perfection does. It survives through whoever fears chaos the most. I should feel trapped. Instead, I feel calm. The hum is steady, the measurements perfect, the world small again. Sometimes, late at night, I hear a faint voice in the static. It doesn't speak words, just the soft rhythm of approval. When I write my reports, the lights outside flicker once, as if nodding. I used to think Marjorie was a monster. Now I think she was a mirror. She showed me what I already was, someone who couldn't stand the randomness of life, someone who mistook control for peace. The truth is, perfection was never hers alone. It just needed another caretaker. Tomorrow I'll repaint the fences. After that, I'll check the sprinkler alignment. The logs must be maintained. Because if perfection falters, even for a moment the cracks will spread, and I can't let that happen. I won't. Sometimes I wonder if the models are still down there somewhere, waiting for me to finish what she started. Maybe they're humming quietly, tiny hearts sinking to mine. Maybe I'm just another piece on the table. But that's all right. Because when everything is in place, when the lights glow in perfect harmony, the world finally feels still. And stillness is what I wanted all along. Perfection isn't peace. It's a cage that smiles. And sometimes, when you polish the bars long enough, you stop noticing they're made of steel. Sometimes, perfection hides the darkest cracks. For more daily HOA stories, click like and subscribe.